Sentinel Online, now loading the Geekcast radio network of podcasts.
Hello and welcome to Altered Geek Unlimited, episode 11. I'm your host, Steve Megatron Phillips, and joining me this week is not Mike Booth Ninja Powers, but Dan MovieRevolt Clark. Welcome.
Yes, Mike's on special assignment. I have taken over for him for this week.
Yes. So, what's been new with you in the last week or two?
Well, I guess the biggest thing was that we started recently the MWire Weekly with Kevin Optimus Solo Thompson and Mike Powers as well. Seems to be taking off quite well so far. We got to talk about Gravity, and we'll hopefully keep that going. Also, getting geared up for some future GCRN projects, which we'll get into very shortly. And trying to kind of catch up with some fall TV shows. I usually don't, but there are actually a good amount this year that I've been kind of into, like the Crazy Ones and the Michael J. Fox Show that I've kind of been impressed with. So overall, and then fall movie season's been crazy so far. So that's the good thing about starting GCRN, or not GCRN, but MWire Weekly. There's a huge amount of stuff we can talk to in the upcoming months. So really looking forward to that.
Yeah, I really like the format, and I mean it's kind of somewhat the original concept that I envisioned when creating the original MWire, but it kind of didn't happen for multiple reasons. But I really love the way that you, Kevin, and Mike have taken off and kind of made it your own thing, and it's obviously resonated very well with everybody.
Yeah, definitely. We've gotten a lot of good feedback so far. Hopefully that'll continue. And I actually just watched a movie today that I'll be talking about on Sunday. Just a quick little preview, which was Joss Whedon's Much Ado About Nothing, his adaptation of the Shakespeare play. Joss Whedon, who, of course, directed The Avengers, Buffy, and all that. So I'll be giving my thoughts on that on Sunday. So if you're at all curious, go ahead and check that out. You can find it on the website, on iTunes. Mike Blanchard and you, Steve, have been both gracious to us, allowing us to kind of add in additional episodes in addition to the retro episodes that are not going away. Those are still going to be there too. This is just like extra content. So hopefully, we'll continue to garner more fans and continue the movie talk going, because obviously I'm a big movie fan, so I'm all for talking more about movies.
Well, and I think it also adds not only something different in the sense of people get to hear kind of what's out in theaters or what it's grossing, or kind of what the hot topics of the various films coming out week to week, as well as kind of a short I like the main attraction thing added to the end, discussing a film that in a sense, I mean, at least this time, you guys have covered one that has kind of been one of those controversial ones between people that they either see the trailer and have good hopes for it, or they see the trailer and think the other direction.
Yeah, definitely. Gravity, which is what we just discussed, it's getting huge amounts of praise, and it's for a lot of specific people. Some people, we mentioned even in the episode, it may not be everyone's movie, but it was a good film to start out with, because I think we had a really good discussion about it, and there's really a lot to dive into with that. So
yeah.
And this upcoming week we'll be probably discussing Captain Phillips, which again should provide for a lot of great discussion.
That actually looks really interesting to me. So
yeah, the whole Somali pirate thing is just fascinating to me, and I like Paul Greengrass as a director because I love Bourne Ultimatum and Bourne Supremacy. So taking him, and he also did United 93, which was also based on a true story.
Oh, okay.
So if he can kind of keep that same type of style, that same type of dedication to realism as he did with United 93, I think Captain Phillips can be also great. Because I'm hearing, obviously it hasn't come out yet, but from everything I've heard so far, which I've been trying to stay away from, which is kind of hard, but I'm hearing good things. So
It looks interesting to me, not because it's got my last name in it, but because it's based on a true story, and in also I really agree in the directorial perspective as well. I really like his films and the Bourne films and his United 93, and then of course I like Tom Hanks, so that kind of is a double feature for me. So that's another incentive. So I mean, I really look forward to hearing what you guys have to say about it when the next episode comes out.
Awesome. Yeah.
So
what news do we have to discuss today?
Well, I figured instead of jumping into various TV or film news like we generally do, being that MWire Weekly is around now, I figure you guys can cover it unless it's something that I really want to delve into. And the TV stuff is kind of just fall TV, and I'll bring up something about that when we get to that point. But the GCRN's Top 100 Animated Film Countdown is starting soon. And for those that remember the Top 100 Animated Series of all time, quote unquote, all time, because we got bashed for the all time catchphrase, which in our defense we were copying IGN, so of course it made sense. I just listened to that and the top 100 and the before and after, and it was done in 2011. And not only is it a long series to listen to, only because it's actually informative and filled with a lot of pertinent information to the series and why they got chosen, but it's a huge undertaking to which yourself and Kevin have taken on the reins of this particular countdown, to which we're calling it a countdown instead of a top list of all time, so that's more of an accurate statement. But why don't you go ahead and tell a little bit more about that, since I'm not really on that other than the what I've been passed of the contributors and the selective art I've put on the site.
Yeah, sure. We started actually when you all did the Top 100 Animated Series countdown. I was actually not even a part of the network at that time. I was only a listener, and that kind of. So I'm actually really excited to be a part of it this time. So obviously, with the countdown, the idea is to try to be as unbiased as possible. It's difficult because no matter what you do, you're going to have biases. That's the whole reason for a countdown. But to try to get as wide of a base as we could, we kind of recruited a lot of people. There's actually, if you go to the Geekcast Radio website, there is a contributors page that Steve put up, and it lists all the people that have provided lists for us. There's a great number of people from names that you may be familiar with, like This Week in Geek, Behind the Voice Actors, animated aficionados. But there's also some new people. And I must say, I'm really gracious to all these people that help us out. A lot of them didn't know me beforehand. I simply sent an email, asked them to be a part of it, and they were really gracious enough to take time and put out lists. And because it can be kind of time consuming to try to figure out, all right, what are the top 100 animated movies of all time? I think people think, oh, okay, I know, but when you sit down to do it, it's a lot difficult than you realize. So I advise going to that page. You'll see everyone that has participated and has put in a list. There's links there to their websites, because we have combinations of movie bloggers like Jake's Take, or movie bloggers like the Small Screensavers. We have podcasts like Super Geeks, Animated Aficionados, the Animation Addicts podcast, along with stuff like Pop Addled, the network, the 21 Network. All their shows provided one list for that as well, and they have a list of podcasts for all different interests. So I think what's really even great about this, besides just, hey, we can get a countdown, it's, hey, here's an opportunity to learn about a lot of cool people doing a lot of cool things. And if you're listening to Geekcast Radio, you're interested in our stuff, there's no reason you would not be interested in their stuff. So check it out for sure. Stuff like Geek Fights, which just recently actually ended their podcast, but they have a huge bank of episodes of talking about some really geeky topics. If you're, ever want to see Star Trek or Star Wars, that's one of the best places to go because they have some epic podcasts about that. So check that out, and hopefully when that countdown starts shortly, it's gonna be epic. There's really curious how it's gonna work out. I don't know what the list is gonna be. Kevin again is the list holder. He is the list master. We are all waiting in anticipation to find out, who's going to be on that list, because we will finding out with the fans. We will, be giving our honest reactions, and hopefully there'll be some surprises. I'm sure there'll be fan favorite films that don't make it as high as they should, and let us know. Let us know what you agree with, what you disagree with. Should be a lot of fun. So a good way to kind of finish out the year here with this epic project.
Yeah, and that's such a huge undertaking. Actually, we meant to do it earlier in the year. It's just a lot of scheduling issues have come up between all the people involved. Not to our fault, just life happened. And so that's one of those things that sometimes can get in the way of putting out one of these grand, huge lists like this. So... and one of the other things is, and I actually have to do this tonight, I have to record all the intros for the, because I'm going to do special intros for the podcast again like I did last time. Unfortunately, I never save anything when I do them, so I have to recreate them all. And it's another one of those fun inside podcasting things where I start off in Audacity and do the vocal effects in there, and then I transfer it over into Sound Booth to do the further editing of those same clips. So I have my work cut out for me, especially with counting down with 100, 99, 98, because I didn't save that either.
I do not envy you at all.
No, that I remember doing that last time. I don't know why I did not save them. That was such a pain. I'm hoping I have them archived somewhere. I doubt it, but I hope. But and according to the last list where I did do custom voices depending on where something placed, I actually did not know where they were. I actually did them all generically to begin with, and then after we recorded the episode, I recorded a special one for it. So I don't even get to find out until we're listening to it live. So that's... which
is great, because it allows for some honest reaction, because... if one of our favorites is like 99 and we think it should be 1, you're going to hear us complain about it. You're going to hear, sometimes when you see a list, you just want to, yell and scream, why could you do that? Well, we're going to be there along with you, and we're going to be on that list together. So it's going to be interesting, I'm sure. There'll be a lot of different opinions, because I think one thing is really for sure with the Geekcast Radio Network is we all have different tastes. We all have different things we like. And... just doing the top 10 countdowns for genre films this past year, earlier this year, we saw that, and I think you're only going to see it on a more epic scale with this countdown.
Oh yeah, so I mean it's going to be a lot of fun. So everybody should stay tuned to the website for more information, because as we actually record them, the Facebook, the website, the Twitter, they'll all blow up, and you'll see a lot of information on that. Plus, I will have that nice red bar below the site logo will magically change to link to each episode as they're released, so you don't have to search them out when they disappear off the main page. So that's a bonus. The other thing is, and we kind of discussed this in our GCRN Inside the core staff meetings, the GCRN Christmas party, which will be a lot of various collaborations between other podcasts in our network and hopefully our partners. And then it'll be kind of one of those down-to-earth, fun kind of episodes. Kind of out of the norm, out of our year-end shows, because our year-end shows typically are a lot of network updates, and then it's a lot of listing various things. So this will be a neat little experiment we're going to try and do, and hopefully we'll do a Google Hangouts for it. So that should be interesting. Yeah,
that should be a lot of fun. That'll be kind of like a you ever wanted to be able to look in at a work party gone wrong, it's kind of what that might be looking like. But it should be fun, kind of looking back at the past year and seeing what happened and our favorite things that happened in, you know, the world of geekdom in different areas like movies, TVs, cartoons, music, you know, the whole lot. And it's gonna be great because if you like open conversation, it's kind of that on even a larger scale because we're gonna have people from all around the network kind of getting together. A lot of us that don't really even communicate with each other that much, so it should be interesting. Where it's going to be an experiment for sure.
Yeah, and we kind of behind the scenes here. Myself, Mike, and Danner last week actually used Google Hangouts to do kind of a test run, more or less to kind of gauge like any audio delays or any kind of stuff like that. And there were some audio delays between some of the settings on Google Hangouts. We're still working out the bugs before we actually bring it live to any shows. So look forward to that. I guess we should get into some listener feedback.
Yeah, definitely.
Lot of comments. Some faces have returned. Some are new. I'm going to jump around a bit, probably.
Okay.
I'm going to start off with Dragano. He asked, there might be a new reboot series? This has me excited. I agree the first season or two of Reboot doesn't hold up, but the later seasons are much better, which I can agree. Yes, they are much better as it goes along. And it's kind of a new reboot series, but kind of a continuation. They haven't really let on to what they're doing yet. But I have to say I'm excited about it.
Yeah, that'll be awesome because I love that last season of Reboot. I guess I don't know if it's the last season, but the one before all the like the TV or the like movies came out, and it does open itself up for a lot more. Like with today's technology, seeing that world and updated tech should be awesome. I mean, that thing started kind of a huge swell of CG animated shows, and yeah, maybe it's not as amazing or as groundbreaking, or I guess if you watch it now, the first two seasons are kind of a slog to get through because the animation's kind of choppy and not nearly as crisp as it is today. But considering that they were breaking new ground, I kind of forgive it. And I haven't revisited that in a while, but maybe I will before this new season comes out.
Yeah, and I think it'll be in 2014 that we actually see something happen with it. But like I said, I have the complete box set of it. It's a 9 DVD set. I've been meaning to actually break it back out for a while, and there is. It just depends on the schedule of myself and Tara, who loves the show. We've been meaning to start a Reboot podcast for about a year and a half now. It's just one of those things that just hasn't come to fruition. So you might actually see that in 2014. Because it wouldn't be very many episodes. I think I counted it's like 15 episodes and then it's done because there's all the episodes and then covering some of the future stuff with it. So, but yeah. Going to some feedback from Connor Murphy. He says, tech is so ingrained into my life, I think I might take it all for granted. And this has to do with what do you take for granted out of geeky or tech things. He says, during a recent power outage, I was going crazy trying to figure out what to do with my without my tech. That I can kind of relate for.
Yeah, it is tough. I mean, it's tough enough just without lights, and then you add in the fact it's like, wait, what am I going to do now? It is. I can understand that, and I guess the good thing is we have phones now. But then once our battery's out, you're kind of done with.
Yeah.
Funny story. I was going to say a funny story about that. A year or two ago, we had a hurricane here in Baltimore. It was like kind of the layover, like the remainder of it. We're all battered down, ready for it, waiting for the power to go out. It never did. So it was like a Sunday morning. I went to go and watch a movie. I threw it in my Xbox, starting to watch it. And our power went out cold. No power and we ended up not having power for a week.
Ouch.
And the issue was, it was a Redbox movie, and it was in my Xbox. and I had no way of opening it because I had no power. So I had to take my Xbox to work, plug it in, open it up, take out the Redbox movie, and then close it, and then take it back into my car because we ended up not having power for a long time because of all the destruction. But I thought we were safe because it's like, oh, the storm's over, we're done. But you never know what happens because trees could fall a day or two later or so. So it was crazy. So living that week without any type of power or anything was not fun. It's not fun to take a shower by candlelight by any means.
Yeah, I think the last time I went without power for an extended time, I think I was still in high school, and I sat there with a flashlight and actually read my comic books.
Nice.
Which I think that was the last time I actually took them all out and read them to read them because I had nothing else to do, whereas now I read them if I get them, and then I don't open them back up for a while.
Yeah, I can understand. So did you read them under the covers just to get the full effect?
Yeah, I mean, I would sit there and actually enjoy them and read, a whole saga of comics, or, it was, I would read them, this particular issue straight on through until another, different type of plot line would start. So, I mean, it's been a while since I've actually done that, but being that I don't usually have to go without power, I don't have that problem, more or less.
Yeah.
But I definitely would say that I take for granted the fact that I have a smartphone now, and I constantly have all my updates and everything attached to my hip.
Yeah. I can understand that. Yeah. We get everything instantly now. It's crazy. It's just, message on Facebook, on Twitter, or anything. It's just always there. You don't have to go a moment without it. But which is in itself, you can look at it as a problem, or you can look at it as like just how amazing it is that can be so connected but disconnected at the same time. It's ironic in that way.
It's one of those double-edged sword issues.
For sure.
Plato's Lament says, as I sit here commenting on my iPad, it still amazes me with everything it can do and how it's changed the way I look at magazines, newspapers, and comics. Yeah, I can definitely agree with the way some of the technology's gone as far as comics, newspapers, and magazines. I myself have read, I read the newspaper on the website rather than buy it. And comics, I still prefer to actually physically hold them in my hand, but I will read them digitally.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I don't know. Reading a comic digitally just doesn't do it for me. I'll do it in some occasions. The magazine thing, I actually still have a magazine subscription. I know we're like an endangered species, but I have one to Entertainment Weekly that I got for signing up for something, I forget. But I think it is really useful for newspapers, because I don't know the last time I used a newspaper for anything besides maybe just had an art project and used it just to so things didn't get dirty. But yeah, I mean, newspapers are kind of going away, but it's great now that you can just go to whatever website and get it. Just the hard thing is, with so much information out there, we don't know what's information and what's just fodder for whatever. But.
Yeah, that's one of those problems with having everything online. A lot of things get lost in the flow. If you sit there and watch from TweetDeck and watch your Twitter feed, you can watch everybody you're following, and it just blows through people within a matter of seconds.
Yeah.
So that's I can definitely see how tech has changed the way that we look at things. King of Kong says, TV still amazes me in many ways, especially how we can all watch the same event happen across the globe at the same time. Something simple but mind-boggling when you think about it.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. I mean, that's been along for a while, but still impressive in what we're able to accomplish.
That's again kind of one of those things along the lines of using Skype or any of these other digital mediums that like cell phones or Skype, or the instant gratification of being able to communicate with somebody. Yeah.
Or if you look at something, if you're talking TV, like the Olympics, where you have all of these different countries all watching the same event all at the same time, and that, that's kind of insane when so many people are captivated by this one event, and it's kind of mind-boggling when you just think of it as a whole, because it's not just like the Super Bowl. It's it's the Super Bowl times hundreds, because it's multiple countries. So
yeah, and he also says he takes for granted the internet because living without it today feels impossible, which I could relate.
Yeah, my job would not exist without the internet, so I can relate as well.
Part of my job would not exist without the internet. And unfortunately, this network would not exist without the internet.
Very true.
So, yes. Jason Ritter says, can I guest star on Altered Geek in the future? We probably won't have listeners guest on episodes. What we'll probably do is have... that's why we really encourage the call-ins. And again, eventually when we start doing the Google Hangouts, what we can do is... have people on for maybe a set amount of time, discussing some kind of a question or topic, and then kind of a rapid roundtables, which I think would be an interesting way of doing something, being that I've never seen it done.
Yeah, that'd be crazy. We've talking about tech and what you're capable of. That in itself would be really interactive and really good way to kind of join in with the fans and get some really cool discussion going. So. Yeah,
because I mean, I mean, on the one hand, I'm kind of along the lines of some other people I know with not particularly having people just randomly guest on that, but on the other hand, I like meeting new people and talking with people and hearing their perspectives. So it's one of those things that would be fun to at least have myself and whoever happens to co-host along with a guest kind of discussing something for a little bit, and then kind of having like a mass call-in show that everybody kind of rotates that third chair.
Yeah. And there is a voicemail line that you can call too if you wanted to provide some sort of audio. So.
Yeah, and I definitely encourage that. I know we get a lot of comments, and I definitely appreciate it. We could use some more iTunes reviews too. That would be awesome. But yeah, that pretty much sums up that question. Freddie Savage says, am I the only one who is still amazed by how photos work? Just the concept taking a real-life image and capturing it into a photo boggles my mind. The more I think about the science that goes into it, I mean, how easy can we take pictures now compared to what it took back in the day?
Yeah, I mean, if you watch, like, you have to stand there for hours to get your photo taken, and now we can do it with the back of our phone, that is kind of crazy. I can get what you're saying, and like the idea of capturing images and trying to take something that's happening in real life and being able to then put it on your phone, or how that has involved so much. Even within, I remember with those first photos you could take with your phone and how like horribly pixelated it would look and how bad they were. But you can get phones that have just as good or photo quality as any digital camera now. So.
Yeah, and that's actually something interesting because recently I got I was given an iPad at work to take pictures of vehicles and post them on our various online inventories. And the funny part about it is, when I first started doing that 7 years ago, I actually had a standard digital camera where I had to plug it into the computer after I take all the pictures. And mind you, they're all not in order, so I had to write down the stock number of the vehicle every time I switched to a different number on the camera. Or I'd have to make one key front shot and then kind of keep a list of what order I did them in, so I didn't mix them up. And I had to rename the files and upload them to like 7 different inventories, and it would take forever to take these pictures. Fast forward to 7 years later, I use an iPad now, which sends it. I snap the pictures within a second of what it used to take. Just taking each angle, it takes about a second to snap the picture. I'm going to have an entire vehicle done within about a minute and a half, picture taken, and then I can hit this save button, and it uploads it to this one inventory that spreads it across the other 6. So, I mean, it's nuts how quick that stuff works now.
Yeah. I'm assuming that makes your day a whole lot easier, not having to do it all the all the busy groundwork and stuff like that.
Oh yeah,
just one app.
I love it. I mean, it's so much easier. I mean, I can do the same thing on my phone technically if I downloaded the app, but it comes in handy having all this stuff so quick at the fingertips to not waste as much time. So I definitely get that with the photo part.
That is I mean, that's one great thing you have to say about technology. It's taking a lot of it's making life a whole lot easier. I mean, we talked about taking things for granted, and there's so much you can take for granted, like the thing you just mentioned, or anything in real, recording how different that is, and then how dummy safe they're making it, and it's crazy. And how my wife who teaches, she uses an iPad, and there's a lot of great things you can do with the iPad in teaching. A lot of great ways to incorporate that into the classroom, which is another good sign. I mean, it's what kids are. We think we grew up with technology, but think about kids, people that are kids today, and then 20 when they grow up and they're our age, how much their lives are going to be just consumed with it, because they're never going to probably ever touch a newspaper or a magazine. They may not even know what it is. There's that awesome picture of a baby trying to use a magazine as an iPad, and she doesn't know how to do it because she's never touched one before. She's just used to using an iPad, and I think that's really going to be the case. I mean, I give it another 15, 20 years, the world's going to look even different than it does now.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's moving so quickly. It's so difficult to predict where everything's going to end up. If you would have told me 10 years ago that I would be communicating with people from all over the place, all over the world, all over the continent, I would tell you that you were crazy. I mean, other than using a phone, but using the internet to do it. Back then, I mean, the most advanced game back then was playing typing to people, playing on the MSN Gaming Zone or playing Diablo.
I remember, if you wanted to download a song, I would start downloading it before I went to school, go to school, come home. By the time I'm home, it might be near done downloading. It would take all day, and now you get it in seconds. The idea of streaming movies, I thought that'd be crazy. How can you just stream a movie? That would take forever back when we had dial-up, but now it's just I stream movies more than I watch TV. So
I remember back in the day when I had my first Transformer website, I downloaded from people the Beast Machines episodes. And it wasn't through a torrent, it was through stuff people actually recorded and uploaded to their website. And mind you, they're maybe 20 megabyte files, because they're only 300 by 200 image size. And I used to think, oh, that's great, because it's, it looks perfect in that little tiny window back when resolutions were 800 by 600. And, it would take 3 hours to download that stuff, 3 or 4 hours just to download one file, just because it was so big. And, that was if you had 56K modem. And then now you can get things within a matter of seconds, so you can stream live gigabytes of TV shows in HD. That's just that the whole concept is wild.
Yeah, true. I mean, thinking about when we had VHSs and what that was like, and how that's changed, and now with DVDs and Blu-rays and the capabilities of what you can put on a Blu-ray, and now we're going to 3D and 4K, and it's just never ending. And then the time span between, think about all the new game consoles that are coming out, and it's crazy. I mean, it's great, it's fun. It's just, if you always feel like you can never catch up by the time you get to the point where it's okay, I think I understand things now. Oh wait, no, I'm behind because everything just changed, and now I need a new thing. It's like when you buy a phone, and oh, I have the newest phone. Oh wait, no, I don't, because a new one comes out next week, and then a new one comes out again. It's this never-ending cycle where it's Can we just pause for a second and take a breath? And there's some good things about it advancing, no doubt, but it's just crazy how we keep just moving and moving, which is a good thing, because, more innovations are good, because you get innovations kind of can lead to amazing things, so.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, do we have any other feedback to discuss?
I think there's one more before jumping into some of the various questions people asked.
Okay.
There's Walking Dread. He says, I take a lot of car technology for granted. He says, over the weekend I drove in my buddy's car that had no power stuff. It was all manual windows, locks, everything. He says it felt weird having to manually make sure everything was locked and closed.
Yeah, funny, because my car actually is all manual. It's all manual locks, all manual windows. Everything's just, got to do it manually. I'm cheap that way, because when I wanted to buy a car, I'm like, because I only have a radio in my car. I don't have a CD player.
Oh, wow.
I don't have anything. Yeah, I am old schooling it big time. It's not like an old car. It's like 2008-ish, I think, 2007. So it was just, that's why I bought it. I'm like, I don't really, need all that extra stuff. I usually just listen to podcasts or whatnot while driving anyways. So, but yeah, I could understand that. Nowadays you don't even need to unlock your car, because you have those keys that will unlock it for you when you get there. GPS is amazing that are built in the cars, and it's just like cars have become their own mecca of technology, and their own media hub too. I remember when they tried to put TV screens into the the steering wheel, but they ended up axing that, because obviously we don't need people watching TV while driving.
Well, the funny thing is they actually have in the center console, it's an LCD screen.
Yeah,
and it's where your in-dash stereo would normally be. They've pretty much on all newer vehicles, at least GM anyway, have gotten rid of the standardized way of doing it. It's all touchscreen LCD, but you can watch stuff on it, or you can download your MP3 player. You can plug in your phone. You can do various elements of that. Now, myself personally, I don't see the need in it, only for the fact that it's kind of overkill. I don't mind. I like having the key fob. I like having the power windows, the power locks, and the power mirrors. But and a CD player or something. But beyond that, I think a lot of it's overkill. A lot of unnecessary things that, when something goes wrong electrically, you're going to have all those things power draining.
Exactly. That was my mindset that's why my car's manual everything. I feel like the more you have that, the more issues you just have to fix. It's great when it's working, but when it's not, it's just this domino effect of things that can go wrong with your car. So.
I have a Chevy Aveo, just for example, and it's the worst car I have ever owned.
That's actually the same car I have.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
You said yours is a 2008?
Oh, it's something like that. Yeah, 2008.
Okay, because that's the newer body style. That's when they actually were decent. Mine's an 05. The second model year of the 05 to 07 were the same style. Those are garbage. It's
mine's not much better, but it's it does when I needed it was a situation where I needed a car. My car was crap in the bed. It's one of them. I couldn't even trade it in. I had to take it to one of those you pull it places, and they gave me money for it. And I feel like they gave me too much because it was a piece of junk. But yeah. It's it feels like a wannabe Mini Cooper, but not as good. But
mine.
The good thing is I like small cars because I live in the city, so it makes driving so much easier.
Mine feels like the Chevy or the Geo Metro and the Chevy Prism put together.
I could imagine what that looks like.
It's the outside of the Geo Metro sedan with the interior of the Chevy Prism. So. It's an odd combo, to say the least.
Yeah.
had so many electrical problems with that car. It's disgusting. To the point that once the temperature drops below 32 degrees, I'm going to start having a check engine light that flashes for the duration of the winter. And when it was under warranty, I took it in pretty much every time the light showed up, and they never were able to actually fix the problem. They replaced pretty much everything under the hood. There's something still in there that's messed up, and I'm going to have that problem in a couple weeks when it starts dropping further, and it'll go away when springtime comes, so it's one of those things I just have to deal with it through the winter.
So your car is kind of like a hibernating bear. It does not like the winter.
No.
It just goes away, and then once it starts getting warm up, it comes out again.
Yeah, it's like, "Rawr, leave me alone. Sleep." But, yeah.
I feel the same way sometimes, so
I don't blame my car.
Yeah.
So yeah, getting into some of the various questions, some of the ones that were in the comments, I of course didn't read them out of the listener feedback. We'll probably save some of them for later, because they are more in depth and longer ones. So what we'll do is we'll probably tackle a few of these shorter ones. One of the guests kind of mentioned our thoughts on the death of Tom Clancy, since he has had an impact on geek culture.
That's for sure. I mean, his name is all over the place. I mean, with video games, movies, I mean, books, obviously, too. I mean, Splinter Cell to Rainbow Six to, the Present Danger. I mean, there's a new Jack Ryan movie coming out this year, which is, it felt weird because that trailer just came out the same week he passed away, so it was really odd timing. I must say, I never have read a Tom Clancy book. Not that he's a bad writer by any means, but I've never personally got really super interested into like what his style per se. I mean, I've loved Splinter Cell, and I've kind of enjoyed the movies about his books, but never really been inclined to read them. There's no doubt he is hugely influential. I mean, I can't think of someone else whose name has been on more properties in different mediums than Tom Clancy. How much he had to actually do with a lot of those, who knows? He's more of a brand than anything, but still, I mean, his style of writing, he's kind of like the Roland Emmerich, the way Roland Emmerich is to disaster movies, he is to like political thrillers. Like, that is his genre. I think he kind of set up the format for that, and I think everyone's been kind of copying him since.
I could see that. I mean, I'm not overly familiar with him either. To kind of, I think your statement more accurately depicts him than I could, only for the fact that I'm not as familiar with all the things he's had to do with. I know that he's had video games. I've played one of the Splinter Cell games before. Interesting. I'll say that, but it's not really my thing. And then I think I started one of his books one time, and then I just never got back to it, mostly because I'm lazy. It more has to do with that. It's not that I don't like to read. It's the fact that I start reading a book, and then I get bored, and I get back into something tech, and then I don't get back to it.
Yeah, I mean, that's one thing I think I need to do more is read. I have all the different things that I'm not into as much as I should be. It's probably books. I do really enjoy audiobooks, but I too have never really read any of his stuff. But you can, just from his, like, the movies that he's done and his, just what he's been into, like that idea of political thrillers and how that all works. I mean, yeah, I doubt he had much to do with how his video games were made. I know he made a thing with the Splinter Cell, his big, in that, like, you have these spectral goggles that can do infrared or do night vision, and that's impossible, but he kind of let it go, because he was a secular for realism when it came to, like, the tech stuff. It appears, from what I hear, so I think that may be something that made him stand out, was his knowledge base, that he kind of came with a background knowledge that a lot of writers didn't have.
Huh, that's interesting.
But yeah, unfortunately, I couldn't I couldn't say more than that. I'm not really well versed in his stuff. But if you are, feel free to comment. Let us know what we should check out, what books we should read. What do you recommend from Tom Clancy? Because for me, I really couldn't tell. I couldn't tell you. I could tell you that Hunt for Red October is a pretty good movie. The rest of them aren't that. I mean, Clear and Present Danger isn't bad. The Summer of All Fears isn't that great. It's starring future Batman himself, Ben Affleck, but I don't know. Jack Ryan always, to me, felt like who was the character in those, always felt like a lesser James Bond, because he just felt like America trying to do a James Bond, but it just never worked completely. I mean, Hunt for Red October is a really good movie, but the rest just, it just didn't work. But maybe this the one coming out this summer with Chris Pine, or I'm sorry, not this summer, but this December with Chris Pine will be good.
Captain Kirk.
So, exactly. Captain Kirk, Jack Ryan, the guy who's played everything.
Yeah. And he can play the kind of, spy / soldier type of guy anyway, just because, what was that movie? The one where he's a spy and kind of thing, and can't remember the name of it.
This Means War?
Yeah, This Means War. Yeah. So, I mean, that kind of, not the comedic part, but the rest of it I could kind of see fitting with that.
For sure.
We did have a comment about, speaking of books, we were asked by King of Kongs, what about a different topic like books? What books are you currently reading, and what are your favorite books?
What are you reading anything currently, or what was the last book that you think you've actually picked up to try to read?
I've attempted a couple different books, and I say attempted because I start reading them, I get so far, and then I stop. Not that I don't mean to finish them, I just, again, I get caught up in everything else we've got going on with Geekcast Radio and just life, and I don't end up picking it back up. I think the last full book I read, and this dates it, was the Star Trek 2009.
Nice.
That I read in its entirety. I am currently in the middle of two different books. One of them is The Art of Voice Acting by James Alberger. It's the third edition. I know there's a fourth out. I had just bought the third, and then the fourth came out, and I was like, that sucks. And then I was reading another book called The Blue Pimpernel, which is actually written by a high school friend.
Nice.
I bought his book. I forget what site it was on. I bought it to support him. Don't remember. I wish I could remember what site it was published on. I'll have to look it up. But it's about basically a government kind of trying to do what ours is doing, in essence.
Yeah.
Kind of rule everything with an iron fist, and then there's these kind of kids that kind of take it upon themselves to change the status quo. So, but it's 453 pages. I got about halfway through. I think he's working on another one, but it's not bad, and I think it would only cost like $10. So I mean, it's not huge, cost, and it's actually like a bigger paperback. So, but yeah, that's pretty much the only two that I had been reading. There are other books that I've been meaning to get to, which are Star Trek related, having to do with the new continuity. But I would say for favorite books, I like the William Shatner series, where he, like The Ashes of Eden, The Return, and all the sequential books after that, where they kind of take place in between films until there are no more Next Generation films, and then he kind of takes on the 24th century timeline on his own in his books, because he revives Kirk in The Return, which takes place after Generations. It's very strange series because it does call back to a lot of old continuity. Some I was familiar with, some I was not. Like they touch on the Mirror Universe, the Borg, the V'ger. A lot of stuff related to that. So I mean, those are good books, and I like Ender's Game. I actually did it.
So are you excited for the movie then?
I'm excited for it. I'm hoping that they do the book justice. Say what you will about the guy that wrote it, for his views on things. That doesn't really matter to me as far as like the book and the movie's concerned, but I really enjoyed the book, and at the time, it was the goal in high school was we had to do a book report project with PowerPoints and everything on a book that won some kind of an award, which it had two. It had like the Nebula and some other bestseller award. And it had to be a book that did not have a movie. So at the time, it obviously didn't have a movie. So I'm actually looking forward to seeing how this movie turns out based on the book, and how they, how I envision the characters and how they present them on the screen.
Yeah, and I don't know if you ever knew, but Marvel actually did a comic series too on Ender's Game way back a few years ago. I never read it, but I've heard so much great things about that book, but I've never read it. So maybe after the movie, I'll have to pick it up and read it and see what I think.
I do recommend that book. I've read it a couple times. I still have it. I really enjoyed that book. Not so much on the ones that took place after the book, because they seem to be a lot slower pace, and not a lot happening. It got into a lot more philosophical type stuff instead of the survival aspect of this film or this book. So it's good though. I'd recommend it. So what are you currently reading, or what are your favorite books?
Well, I'm a sucker for like post-apocalyptic literature or anything really, movies, what have you. So some of my favorite books are related to that. One is Cormac McCarthy's The Road, which is one of the most fascinating things I've ever read. Just in the way it's set up, it's a really like simple read in a way, and how it's like presented, like the diet, like it's really the writing style. It's really it takes away a lot of style, and it feels like you're reading some guy's journal the way it's written, and there's loose grammar structure for the most part, and it's a fascinating book. It's so dreary and so it's depressing as anything. Cormac McCarthy is an author I really do like, and his books do tend to translate well to the big screen, because he also wrote No Country for Old Men, which is also really great. I actually haven't read that book, but that movie's amazing. But I enjoy that. Another post-apocalyptic movie I like or book I enjoy is The Stand by Stephen King, which is an easy go-to. But I think that might be one of my favorite books of all time. It's such an epic story and so grand. It's a huge book. It's like thousands of pages because it's Stephen King and he puts so much detail and everything. But the characters in that, and I was fascinated by that book. I even tried to watch the old, like after I was finished reading it, I tried to watch. They did like a TV series back then, like a TV miniseries, which was so bad. It was so bad. I enjoy that. Also, the last thing I actually read, I reread World War Z. I just finished that. I picked it up after the movie was over or finished, just because I wanted to go back and revisit it, and I read it and actually listened to the audiobook, and that's one of the best audiobooks I've ever listened to. It's great because it gets so many different people to contribute. It has Mark Hamill does a chapter, because if you didn't know anything about World War Z, the way it's split up, it's a bunch of interviews put into like that take place after the war is over with the zombies. And so each interview is a different actor. Because you have people like Nathan Fillion, like I said, Mark Hamill, Martin Scorsese does a chapter, Alan Alda does a chapter. It's insane the amount of people that get. Henry Rollins, a lot of different people. So that's a great audiobook, and if you're at all a fan of audiobooks, I think that's a great one to start with. One of my favorite series to get off the post-apocalyptic thing is the John Rain series by Barry Eisler. And I guess it's kind of a good correlation to Tom Clancy, because he does kind of political thrillers. He was a former CIA agent, and he wrote these books, and they are crazy detailed, and he knows what he's talking about. He's also really big in the martial arts. So it's about this guy who is half Asian, like half American. He's kind of like an assassin who lives in Japan, and it's a great series. Their first book is Rainfall, and there's a few of them. I think there's like 6 or 7, and I really got into that because I picked up one of his books. Like it was one of the last books, and I didn't want to read them, so I went back and read all the first ones, and it's really great. It's just how detailed it is, and it feels really real. And he's really great at like explaining like how to get away from people and how to track, and the characters are really great. So I advise picking those up if you're a Tom Clancy fan. I think that is a good like counterbalance to that. And another book I really love is I'm big into political satire, and it's Thank You for Smoking, which is hilarious, and it's funny. It's about this guy who works as the spokesperson for a tobacco company, and he's a lobbyist, and he kind of explains his side of things, and it's really satirical. I love the movie too, and I think the book is just as good. If they're around this, it's one of my favorite movie book combos because I really enjoy both of them. So,
yeah, that definitely kind of makes me double think about at least listening to the audiobook about World War Z and actually watching that Thank You for Smoking one, because I mean, that one just looks cheesy just by the title and the cover, so I kind of discounted it on that. I kind of pulled a decision on it based on the cover rather than actually finding out what it's about. And then like the World War Z, I watched the movie, but I felt lost watching it.
Yeah, the movie and the book they're similar in some ways, but they're very, very different. But I would say, I mean, I know you're a huge Mark Hamill fan, and he does have some of the biggest parts in that. And check it out, because I think the book's so much easier to follow because it's really just people giving their stories and kind of explaining what happened to them, and you just get an entire appreciation for it. And he treats it with such the Max Brooks, who wrote it, who's the son of Mel Brooks, the famous movie comedian, and the director of Spaceballs and tons of great stuff. But he puts so much detail, and he makes it feel so real, as if it's an actual war. And he also uses it to kind of get into a lot of issues like just about our culture in general and culture as a whole. So I would, if you don't want to read it, it's a great listen to. It's something you can kind of pop on as you're going to work and coming back and stuck in traffic, So even if you're not a zombie fan, I know there's a lot of zombies haters out there, but zombies are just kind of, it's about zombies, but it's so much more than that.
It's one of those current fads that just kind of fits the thing with zombies, not the film itself.
Yeah, I mean, zombies are probably more popular now than they have been in a long time, but they've been around for hundreds of years. I mean, since Night of the Living Dead in the 60s, but they have hit a new pop culture plateau in the last few years. So, but this came out well before that. This was kind of what helped started it all.
Oh, nice. Yeah, definitely. I'll have to check that out then.
Cool.
Jumping into another question posed by SuperFilmFan98. He was making a comment about the last episode, saying that something about Danner that just keeps him laughing. He said he reminds him of George Costanza for some strange reason. And then he says, speaking of Seinfeld, are any of you stand-up comedian fans? And if so, who are your favorites?
Are you at all into stand-up comedy?
It's kind of hit or miss for me. Certain people, I like watching stand-up comedy. Some of the stuff that shows up on Comedy Central Presents is pretty good. Like I like Stephen Lynch, even though he does it in the form of a song. I find his songs very kind of ironic and funny. And then if you're watching it, the way that he carries himself while he's doing this stuff, even if it's just a slight head nod or a certain look in his face when he does a certain part of the song or something, it's just it makes it even more funny to the point that you almost barrel over laughing.
He's pretty hilarious.
I like a lot of the stuff he does. Another one's George Carlin. An oldie but a
definitely.
goodie.
I mean, you can't. Actually, I got to see him. I'm one of the things I'm really happy about in my life is that I actually got to see George Carlin live. It was near the end of. It was a few years before he passed away. He wasn't at the height of his career, but it was great just to be able to kind of be in a theater with him doing comedy.
He may have been vulgar and everything else, but he was so true and hilarious with his comments of society and people and stupid rules and just the way things worked. I mean, the ironies he'd bring up and all of his conversation was. I have all of his stand-up stuff on Netflix and my favorites, so
nice.
It's fun to watch from time to time if I really feel like hearing something.
It's a good pick me up for a bad.
Oh yeah, because I mean, no matter what he says, it just makes you laugh. Trying to think of some other ones that I like. Man, I know I have other ones I like watching. I guess I'll let you go ahead and I'll try and think.
Sure. Well, I mean, I'm a huge stand-up comedy fan. I'm big into a lot of different comics and different comic podcasts and everything like that. And you, of course, talked about George Carlin. You really can't say stand-up comedy and not mention him. The other comic I think I've seen live too recently, wasn't too long ago, was Daniel Tosh. A lot of people know him from his Comedy Central show. Tosh probably know him. But I think his comedy itself is really great. I like him because I like comics that will kind of push that envelope, are willing to make fun of everything. Because I'm the type of person that has that belief where I think you can make fun of anything. I don't think there's any sacred ground that you can't touch as long as you do it right and are funny enough to handle some of the bigger topics. Now, some people can do it horribly wrong and just be kind of shock and awe, just to be shock and awe. But those that can do it correctly are amazing. Like someone obviously today's big person to go to is like Louis C.K., who I find again hilarious. He what he can find comedy in, and there's some huge truthfulness into what he says, and he's just honest, and he finds just some craziness about life. And I love his show too, Louis. He's great. He's probably, most people say he's the top one right now. I think if you're at all a geek, a good one to go to is Patton Oswalt.
Oh yeah, he's
he
funny.
Himself is he's a huge geek himself. A lot of what he talks about is geek related. He's hilarious. I'm also just going through a list here. Bill Burr, who he is more of abrasive. He comes from Boston, and he has that Boston attitude. And which one of the greatest things I've ever seen was him completely attack this Philly crowd that was being miserable at this comedy festival, and he just went after them and started to talk about how horrible Philadelphia is. And coming from a New York Giants fan that can't stand Philadelphia, I loved every minute of it. So that was great. But so yeah, I'm also I listen to a lot of the podcasts, like the Mark Maron podcast, and if you're a stand-up comedy fan, that's a go-to because those are amazing. Mark Maron himself is really funny, and he has a lot of great comics on there that I like. Someone I wasn't a fan of originally, but I've kind of grown into one, was Paul F. Tompkins. Thanks in large part to the Doug Loves Movie podcast. He's got a really great word play, and he does some good impressions. And probably my all-time favorite are two people, one being Lewis Black. I just find him endlessly funny. And Stephen Wright, who is like a really dry delivery. He's great at just writing jokes, one-liners. He has a lot of great sayings, a lot of funny sayings that you see around on bumper stickers or things he actually said. Like, what happens if you're driving the speed of light and you turn on your headlights? Stuff like that. I'm doing it horribly, but
nice.
But yeah, so I mean, I love comedy in general. I mean, there are a lot of bad comics out there for sure, but it's a medium that you can do a lot of fun things with, and when you see a great stand-up comic, there's nothing like it. Someone who can kind of make light of like really difficult situations. It is really an art form. So,
well, like we have a comedy club around like within an hour drive, and we've gone to a couple there. My wife and I, and one of the times we went, because they had various guys on there. One of them was doing like a Comedy Central Presents thing. We happened to be the unlucky table that was sitting directly in front of him. To which he made fun of my wife at one point during the show. Not her personally, but the fact of, because he says, how old is everybody in the room? And he says, keep your hands raised until I get to the, certain demographic or whatever. And, until, basically she was the youngest one in the room. And then he started doing 80s cartoon theme song trivia, but he would hum them.
Really?
To see if she could figure them out. And I'm sitting here because I don't want to tell her and be the next subject of his attack. And being a geek, theme songs to your favorite shows, or even ones that you didn't care for because they had catchy tunes back in the 80s and 90s. He did the Smurfs theme song. She had no idea. To which everybody else in the room is just like, I know it. And I'm sitting here like, my hand is over my forehead, and I'm just shaking my head. I'm like, you should know this. And she's just giving me this blank stare, and and then he's just ragging on her. He says, wow, you're, I can't remember the exact words, and I would butcher it anyway, so I'm not going to try, but he just basically called her a little baby or something, and ragged on her for like 5 minutes, and then kept calling back to her later in the show. I've actually seen Dane Cook before.
Oh, nice.
He's kind of hit or miss.
I actually remember watching like his first premium blend special when I first got Comedy Central, and I thought he was hilarious then. I was younger, and I know there's a lot of hate out there for Dane Cook, but like you said, I think he's hit or miss. Like, he can hit things and be really funny, but then there's some stuff where you're like, I don't know what you're trying to do there. But.
Well, like when he gets into some of the sex jokes, it's not funny. It's like he's trying too hard. But then when he's talking about, for instance, like, that guy that he works with, and then he, the one that a while ago on the internet, everybody kind of synced up a Halo video type thing too, where he talked about, the guy that works in the cubicle next to you, and, he just loses it one day and starts shooting everybody and something else or whatever, and remembers that you're the one that gave him a Snickers bar or something, and so he spares you and says, thanks for the Snickers, and then he goes on and keeps shooting everybody else around you. It was one of those stupid things, but it was hilarious because of the way that he presented it, or the way he'd walk around on the stage. So, I mean, some of that stuff's funny. The one time I did see him, he was like 45 minutes late on stage, and
really?
For an hour and a half show, I think he was on stage like 40 minutes, and then he left. I was like, wow, that was a waste of money.
Yeah.
One of the other ones I want to see is Dave Coulier.
Nice.
Because he's a Michigan native. He's a voice actor. He was on Full House. But he's a comedian, but he does clean comedy. So I've always wondered what that would be presented by, because most everybody you hear is not clean.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few, like Jim Gaffigan is one that comes to mind, who is clean but really funny. My wife saw him actually in college. His show wasn't clean though. I guess he maybe changed then, because his big thing was like, it's Uncle Joey, and I'm saying the F word. It's like, I can't believe it, because it was, to a college crowd that grew up with him as Uncle Joey. I think he was kind of playing up to that angle. But yeah, he does a lot of college tours, and he has a new tour now. I think it's like the clean comedians, or the clean comics of comedy, or something like that.
Yeah, and he actually has a comedy club somewhere here in Michigan, and
oh, nice.
I think that's the same one that we went to and saw some other. That's the one where the guy that did the Smurfs thing against my wife. That was funny, and we were like a week or two too late to getting tickets to see him because they were all sold out. Which
nice.
I would have loved to have seen, because that would have been hilarious. Yeah. But I gotta agree. I really do like seeing comedy stuff, whether it be on Netflix or on stage. It's one of those things that makes you forget about everything around you, and kind of embrace the silliness of society and whatever they're making fun of, but also catch the message at the same time.
Yeah. Like a comic who can really deconstruct some like interesting things about life, or some like major issues, and make them funny, even about their own personal life, is pretty impressive. Like someone like Louis C.K. he talks about being a parent in ways that no one says out loud, but people think. But he kind of says it out loud, and he's kind of able to get at certain issues that we kind of are aware there, but don't speak of. And he doesn't. I love his one bit about like how people just don't appreciate how awesome things are. To go back to like the whole technology thing, like he had a bit like someone will be on a phone, and then like it's not working, and it's like, well, just give it a second. It's going into space. Just give it a second and like let it, because people, all they do is complain. And his thing is like, well, things are awesome now, but it's an awesome bit. Look it up online, because it's talking about putting things into perspective. It goes right in line with what we were talking about taking things for granted, and it kind of goes into that, how we take something like getting delayed at an airport for granted, and we like complain about that. But then it's like, well, you're about to fly in the air. Like, how crazy is that? Like, if you go back, a few hundreds of years, they think you were a sorcerer, and we just do it on an everyday thing. So, I do like that. Like, when comics can kind of get at things that you kind of help you reevaluate the way you look at life.
One of my favorite ones to watch, and he's kind of a comic, but he's also a ventriloquist, is Jeff Dunham. I don't know if you've ever watched his stuff.
Yeah, I know Jeff. Yeah, I know Jeff.
That guy is hilarious. I love the various puppets that he uses. And that's again another one of those ones that we just happen to miss, or we happen to be broke around the time that he's having a show. I'm really hoping to catch him in 2014 because my wife really wants to see him too.
His shows are like super expensive. I enjoy Jeff Dunham. I'm not the hugest fan of him. I think. But I mean, there's no doubt he's funny. He's one of the most popular comedians going today. But we tried to get tickets because my wife is a big fan, and it's like his prices are 3 times the price of like anyone else, because he's so popular right now. He has such a huge crowd going.
Well, you're looking at almost $200 for a couple.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's kind of a lot.
When seeing Daniel Tosh was like half that, so it just kind of tells you just the way people go. Like, I really want to see Chris Hardwick, Nerdist, who's from Nerdist. I wanted to see him because he came to Baltimore, but I missed him, and I wanted to see Jamie Oliver, the guy who took over for Jon Stewart, who's also a stand-up comic. He came to DC, but I'm gonna miss his show because I kind of do like political comics, or some of them, like I said, like a Lewis Black, like a Bill Maher, like a John Oliver. But do it in funny ways, because I don't really care at all about politics. But when someone can kind of put a funny spin on it, I can get into it that way. So
yeah, and one of the other ones that I've actually seen twice now is Colin Mockery and Brad Sherwood from Whose Line Is It Anyway?
No, oh, that's awesome.
Doing their tour that they were going around doing. I can't remember the exact name of it, but it was like Colin and Brad's something show or whatever, and they did actual skits from Whose Line plus new stuff. Plus, they would have scenes created, and they would go through a phone book, and they'd have people come up and just point at something, and then they would grab whatever happened to be there, and use it as the scenario, and which I'd seen them do on the green screen show and the Improvaganza, and but it was also funny because they had a part towards the end where they would put mouse traps all across the entire stage.
Interesting.
And they would be barefoot and blindfolded. And they had stage help that would keep a rope up at when they'd get too close to the edge of the stage so they didn't fall off. So they would bump into it. And they would go around and they had to do the speaking in sentences with the alphabet, starting off with a certain letter, and then have to make their way back just like on the Whose Line skit. And it was very difficult for them to keep in concentration while they're stepping on these mouse traps.
I could imagine that would hurt your concentration a little bit.
And it got funnier because Colin, on both shows, would cheat. Well, actually, on one of the shows, Brad cheated, and he took, the blindfold partially off and grabbed like 3 or 4 of those. Managed to snap one on his hand while he was trying to do that, and then he threw a bunch of them at Colin, and he started jumping and started stepping on a bunch of the mouse traps. And then, so the next show that I actually saw him at, because it was 2 different places in Michigan, like within 2-3 years apart, the second time I saw them, Colin actually took his off completely, and he picked up like 8 of them or something, and it just started like chucking them at Brad. And then Brad lifted up his blindfold, and Colin had his back on, and he's walking around, and then it was hilarious because they're just constantly doing the check and balance of the whole thing. But and then they'd make up some kind of goofy song about what city they're in. But it was a really fun show. I wish that they did more stuff like that, and I really am glad that Whose Line's back. Kind of on a side note, but that's one of my favorite comedy things that I've seen.
I have yet to really check out the new Whose Line, but I love the old one, so I'll have to try to pick that up and catch it. Hopefully it'll throw it on Netflix or something.
I'm hoping, but I know you can watch some of it on like on-demand type stuff, or you can watch it on the CW site. The other thing about it is there's 2 annoying parts to that show, to the CW version compared to the ABC Family. They tend to do a lot of the same skits over and over between episodes, and maybe introduce 1 new one per episode. Instead of like they only deviate 1 skit, and then they always have pretty much the same beginning ones and the same end ones, and there's like 1 middle one that changes between all the episodes for the first season. And they keep having, other than like 2 episodes out of the I think 11 or 10 or 11 that aired, they had special guests from random TV shows like Glee or Walking Dead or Nikita or stuff like that, and they would show up for 2 of the skits. So it was kind of annoying.
Yeah, when they're obviously like product placement or trying to advertise for shows.
Yeah,
I could understand.
It was really annoying, kind of grating. I mean, I wish they would have just grabbed people from the audience and went from there, because it. Now, granted, they can swear on this version because they're not in ABC anymore. They can kind of do whatever. They just bleep out when, like, there's a scene where Colin basically says, puppet up somebody's, what, and then he says, and then, starts to drop the F-bomb, and then they bleep him. And then, everybody else just starts laughing and losing it. It was just hilarious, but that would have never flown on ABC.
Yeah. Now they're on CW, and CW is more edgy, so I guess they can get away with it.
Yeah, it's for teens.
Yeah, I feel so old watching that network. It's just everyone. If you're above the age of 23, you're considered an old person. It's just weird.
Yeah, there's only two shows I watch on there. It's Supernatural, because I kind of have been watching it since the first season, and Whose Line.
I did record the Tomorrow People just to see how that is. I'm curious. I haven't checked it out yet, but it's the premise got me interested, so I'll give it an episode and give it a little bit of a poke and see if I like it.
I guess briefly we can bring up a little bit of the TV shows we've been watching before we drop the new questions on people and call it a night.
Okay. I only have a few. I have watched the first 2 episodes of S.H.I.E.L.D. I'm pretty much agreeing with what you guys mentioned in the episodes prior. On the Geekcast radio special episode. The first episode was okay. It had its moments. It's clearly building up to something. It's a pilot, so I'm willing to forgive some things. The second episode was an improvement. The third episode, I was meaning to go back to. I just didn't get an opportunity to see it. But my friend did mention that it actually does have an actual supervillain in it, or at least a guy who eventually does become one, and that's Gravitron, who's probably an E-level hero. But it's kind of cool that at least they are bringing in some Marvel villains that are, maybe they're not that popular, but they're at least trying to pull from the actual comics. So I'll check that episode out. The other things I'm watching the Michael J. Fox show.
Okay.
Which I found pretty good. Not a big fan of using the mockumentary style. Just they do it really poorly. It doesn't flow as well in that show. It just comes out of no place. They started in the first episode, and they've been doing it ever since then. I don't know. I just don't think it's necessary. But besides that, Michael J. Fox is really likable. I think the dynamic with his family is pretty good. It's one that I think that it has potential. I watched the Crazy Ones too, and I think it's along the same lines. It's pretty funny. I like the fact that they just kind of give Robin Williams the green light, and he does whatever he wants, which is cool. And him and Sarah Michelle Gellar have a good back and forth, and they have a good chemistry with one another. I watched the first 2 episodes as well, but what I've seen so far, the only thing that bugged me about the pilot was most of the strongest parts of that were all in the trailer. But it's the first episode, so it's typically what happens. Don't know if I'm watching anything else new. I do plan on picking up Almost Human when that comes out. The only thing else that I was watching was the last season of Breaking Bad, which was some of the best television I've ever seen in my life. But yeah, what else have you been watching?
Well, I've been watching the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I was impressed with the first episode, the pilot. Somewhat. I mean, I was impressed as far as some of the stuff with Agent Coulson, and other than that, I didn't really care. The second episode, I liked the fact that they had Nick Fury tied in there, and then he made the comment about Coulson, 6 days? He's like, you've had this thing 6 days, he says, and you've already destroyed it. And then, so that was kind of nice having that nod in there. And it was kind of odd seeing Sam Jackson in TV.
Yeah.
But I liked it. I mean, I would watch the show more. I would love it a lot more if they had him in there kind of leading the task force a little bit. But I understand why they have Coulson in it.
Did you watch the third episode yet?
Yes. I watched the third episode. I won't go into any kind of spoilers or details. But yeah, they did reveal that villain, which I guess from now on they're going to have the after the credits scene to every episode, kind of teasing for the future.
Interesting.
That's going to be one of their kind of things like they've done with the films. And they did get greenlit for the entire first season, so we should see more of what happens in the future, which I kind of knew that they were going to get the first season thing, like Mike and I had talked about. It's ABC, they own Marvel, or Disney. They own Marvel, they own ABC, they own the Avengers, they own S.H.I.E.L.D., I mean, they own all that stuff, so it's kind of, it's a marketing scheme within a marketing scheme.
Yeah, exactly. I think they would. I think they would keep it, even if it was a failure. I think just out of embarrassment, they would not. They would make it at least one season, just so I think they'd be too embarrassed if it wasn't. But yeah, I'm not surprised that they're just printing money with that show. I mean, the ratings have gone down, but that's bound to happen with any show. So
that's why they should do like maybe 10 episodes a season and have them take place between movies.
Yeah,
that would make more sense for it anyway, or between Avengers films anyway.
I am kind of curious to see how it correlates with the movies, if it's just completely disregarded, or if they have some of those characters show up in the movies as background characters, or what will they, how they will handle that. But I mean, that's the weird thing about the show. It's like it's going to be majorly affected by stuff that doesn't even happen on it. So that'll be interesting.
I have this odd feeling, gut feeling anyway, that the chick that they brought in to S.H.I.E.L.D., to that little agent task force, that's not actually a S.H.I.E.L.D. member, but she's kind of one of that shady outsider. I have a feeling that she doesn't quite know what she wants to do yet, and they're just kind of alluding to the fact that she's a possible mole. I have a feeling that another member of that task force is the mole.
Yeah, I could say.
And I think it's one of the techies.
That, or the their James Bond type of character, the guy who, I can't think of his name, but the guy that's like does all the action. He was he was a lone agent. I could see him playing that role, because then he could be a good villain for them, because he has all that knowledge, and he can go toe-to-toe with Coulson. But
it'd either be that or that Melinda May. I have a feeling it's going to be a female. They want you to think it's the new recruit lady, but I want to say that it's going to be the female techie, or that Melinda May that everybody seems to trust and know that she's famous. I think that they might get something on her, and she may kind of flip-flop.
True. Or and I could see like one of the scientists, because he could, like, the brother, maybe he becomes like a possessed with like his science and tries to take over. But I do agree that it's showing itself too much for her to be the actual mole. It's probably be somebody else, but we'll see.
Yeah.
I'm my thing with Coulson, I know that's a big question, like what does that mean? I have a feeling like it is really Coulson, but like he was taken to Asgard, because when he said it was a magical place, the first thing I thought of was like Asgard, because of magic, and they were talking about that in like the Tesseract in that episode. So I'm thinking maybe he was taken to Asgard and he was cured by magic or something like that, since he was hurt by magic. But
or maybe he was resurrected by the Scarlet Witch, what they're going to have in the next film.
True, that's a possibility.
I've heard that rumor too. So the other show that I've been watching that I really like is The Blacklist. I just like that whole kind of Hannibal Lecter-ish type thought process behind the main villain.
Yeah, I do like James Spader. I might have to check that show out, but there's so much to watch, But I've heard a lot of good things. That's probably the one I'm hearing the most things about is The Blacklist.
That's actually, funny enough, the highest rated favorite fall TV show on the website on the poll.
I could see that. Which says something about S.H.I.E.L.D. if that's being, on a Geek website, is beating out S.H.I.E.L.D. But.
Well, S.H.I.E.L.D. is close behind by one vote, and the Crazy Ones is tied with S.H.I.E.L.D., which I like only because it's Robin Williams and it's bringing him back to TV, and he gets to do his goofy type of comedy, and you have the kind of plain, stone-faced Sarah Michelle Gellar kind of, doing the polar opposite of what he's doing. And then you have the other guy that's kind of like a young Robin Williams in the show. That's kind of the protege.
Yeah. And you have the one guy who was in the newsroom that has he was a dude who was in the second episode taking care of the ducks. He was a big character in the newsroom this past season. So
yeah, so I mean that show I think has a lot of potential. I don't see that getting canceled. That'll be in essence like the last man standing for that station.
Yeah, especially at CBS.
Yeah.
And CBS, I mean, I don't know why, but their ratings machine, I don't know. I don't know why 2.5 Men is so popular as it is, but it's that's on the night that like CBS just like owns it. But
well,
we'll see.
Big Bang Theory I really like still too, but it's that CBS seems to have a lot of the comedies, whether some of them deserve to survive or not. But I don't see them killing off a lot of them. 2.5 Men, that's pretty much almost getting close to that death slot. Because I think it airs at like, 9:30, 10 o'clock now?
Yeah, I mean, it's still, I mean, I'm sure it still gets great ratings. CBS, I think, their programming is very, they have a huge base. I mean, their broad appeal. I mean, I don't know any great shows that they have. I mean, the fact that I'm actually watching a show on CBS amazes me. I do like Big Bang Theory, and I do like the crazy ones, but like most of their crime dramas and their other shows, they just seem so generic. But I think that's why they're so appealing to people, because they're shows for old people in a sense. You know, they're just like all those Law and Order. I think they do Law and Order, right? I don't even know, or no, they don't. That's NBC. But they have a lot of those crime shows that are just kind of a dime a dozen, from what I can see. I mean, feel free to disagree with me. I'm probably annoying a lot of CBS fans, but I think most of those don't get on the computers because they're so old. But I don't know. Are you watching anything else this fall?
Yeah, I mean, I can kind of see a lot of that with those shows. That I've been watching a lot of different things, like Revolution, Supernatural, Big Bang Theory, Last Man Standing. Enjoying a lot of those shows since they've come back. So I mean, I don't see a lot of change in that for the foreseeable future.
I need to pick up. I stopped Revolution like halfway through the first season. I just couldn't do it to myself anymore. But I'm hearing the second season has like been much of an improvement. So maybe I'll have to go back and finish the first season to get to the second season.
For Revolution,
it was just frustrating me. But
you said for Revolution.
Yeah, I need to go back. I've heard the second season has been an improvement over the first season.
It's a completely different writer.
Oh yeah.
They brought over one of the veteran writers from Supernatural, so it's definitely got that kind of vibe to it now. More of a, it's more character driven than plot device driven.
Yeah, that's good, because that's the one thing that annoyed me about that show is like it can never figure out what it wanted to be. It felt like I was reading someone's first draft, and they kept changing it halfway through and starting off with a new concept every week. And the characters are pretty unlikable. But if they got someone in that can actually handle good characters, that has me intrigued.
Well, and then they've kind of flipped some of the status quo with some of the characters. So like one way people are no longer that way. So it's kind of like they've completely morphed the series from what it was attempting to do to what it should have been doing. So it's definitely working now.
That's good to hear. I mean, and you'll have those shows that the first season isn't that great, but they grow into themselves. Like one of my favorite shows of all time was The Office, and its first season was okay, but it really found its place in the second season. Just because sometimes when you're trying something, I mean, that has a grand scale to it, or is a giant concept like that, it takes a little bit to kind of find your footing. So I'm assuming the same thing is going to happen with The Shield. Once they can kind of get an idea of where they're going with it, maybe they can get episodes that are even, like you said, even have better characters and are more interesting in that way.
Well, and I've also heard from various people that, even from this podcast, that Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., being that it's a Joss Whedon thing, it usually hits its stride after like the 6th episode.
Yeah, I could see that. I've actually never really.
People.
Yeah, I've never watched any of Joss Whedon's shows. I've never watched Buffy. My wife has, but I've never watched Buffy. I've never watched Angel or Firefly. I've seen Serenity, but I could understand that when you're trying. All of his shows are pretty high concept, so when that happens, it does take some time because you have to kind of establish the world. You have to get the characters into place and figure out like how they're going to fit into this world. So it does take some time to get it all sorted. You've been watching anything else of note?
No, I think that's about it that I've been watching.
Okay. Yeah, I haven't really been watching much. I've been trying to catch up with...
Anything else you've been watching, or...?
Orange is the New Black on Netflix, and Ricky Gervais's new show, Derek, but I've only watched the first episode of that, and Hello Ladies on HBO, which is Stephen Merchant, and I'm a big Stephen Merchant fan. But I've only, again, caught that first episode. It was okay. I have a tendency, I'm a person that likes to marathon shows. I don't know if you're the same way, so I usually let things build up, and then I'll go back and knock out a few all together.
I wish I was like that. Only for the fact that some of the shows tend to get backed up for me, being that I've got class one night a week that kind of throws things off, and then I've got other stuff going on. So sometimes I don't always get to see the episodes, and then I have to backlog them on a flash drive to watch them later. Which I like to be able to watch them back to back to back. It's the waiting part that kills me. So I like to watch them as soon as they air, just for that purpose, but then I hate that because then I'm waiting a whole week, whereas if I just waited until the season was done and then just watched a DVD set of them, I could just blow through the whole season and be done with it.
I could understand that, because one show I watch is Game of Thrones, and I think that is one that benefits from marathon watching, because this is the first year I've watched that back to episode, and that show is so dense with characters, and there's so much going on. I find myself lost a lot. I have to go back and try to figure out what's going on. But that waiting a week can be killer if a show is really good. At least it's a good sign that the show is interesting you if you can't wait for it to come. I mean, that's kind of a cool feeling to have, though, when you just can't wait. That's the thing I miss about being in the comics, is getting that comic you can't wait to get into, having to wait a month, but when it finally comes, it's you appreciate every moment of it.
Exactly.
All right. So anything else you want to cover?
Talk
about the questions for next week.
I think we'll just bring up the questions for next week. The new questions are any of you stand-up comedy fans? And if so, who are your favorites? Yes, we did steal that exact quote. What CG series has made an impression on you, and what about it made you love it? CG series is in computer generated, like Reboot, Beast Wars, Beast Machines, the Beware the Batman, Transformers Prime, that kind of stuff. And then the final one: what is your dream job? Can be non-geeky or super geeky.
A lot of good questions there. There's a lot you can kind of dive into. I mean, if you have any interest in any of those, make sure you comment on them. How can they comment and answer those questions, Steve?
Well, there are many ways to do so. You can call the voicemail line 502-526-5821. Please remember to leave your name and the show you're leaving it for, so we can get it to the proper podcast. You can email us, feedback@geekcastradio.com. You can visit the forums and the episode post at geekcastradio.com. You can join the Facebook fan page by searching Geekcast Radio Network. You can visit us over on Twitter at GeekCastRadio, #AlteredGeek. My Twitter contact is at SCP21, and yours is?
I'm at MovieRevolt.
So I think that about does it for this time. Is there anything else you want to bring up?
No, I mean, like I said, if check out MR Weekly. Most of the episode will be coming out on Mondays. You can also read my movie reviews. That'll be up on the website. That's pretty much where you can find me. And if there's any movies that you would like us to specifically watch or talk about, let us know, and I'll do my best to try to do so. That's pretty much all I have.
Okay. And thank you very much for joining me on such short notice for this episode. Well, not short notice. We've both known since earlier today, but still.
Yeah, no problem. I am happy to pinch hit for Powers. So he'll be back next week, I'm sure.
Oh, I'm sure.
So those who are upset that he's not on there, don't worry. I'm not taking his place. Things happen.
Yeah, we'll probably have you on as a guest in the future. Possibly
Awesome.
soon. More of that off
Alrighty.
air. So, as always, get altered, get geeky with the Altered Geeks. See you next time.
See ya.
Boil 'em, mash 'em, stick 'em in the stew.